Hello, my name is Greg Clark, and I am a WikiTree member and an app developer. And today I would like to show you the latest version of my 6Degrees app. I'm recording this on August 1st, 2022. So the first thing you need to know is how to get to the app, and you can get to it in a number of different places, but one of the easiest ones is to go to the Find menu when you're on any WikiTree page, click on the Apps option, and then scroll down to find 6Degrees because the apps have been nicely organized alphabetically by Jamie Nelson. And here we are, so we can click on 6Degrees. And then it's going to, if you're already logged into the server, it'll automatically start loading uh, the information for your profile. I'm going to switch to a different profile to demonstrate some of the features, and then we'll come back to mine in a little bit later. So I've loaded the profile here for Loretta Macchione, who happens to be my wife's grandmother. And she has passed on. But here we have the default, and it shows 20 connections at the first degree. So just a quick reminder of what the 6Degrees app does is it actually collects all of the information about people who are connected to a profile. So the first degree are those who are the parents, siblings, spouse, and children of the primary person, in this case of Loretta. So you can see those 11 green dots, so the bright green are all her siblings. So the 11 siblings that she had, 6 of her children are there, her 2 parents, and 1 spouse. And then if we increase that to 2 degrees, then you get, it moves out. So the parent, sibling, spouse, and children of all the people who are on the first degree ring now get added. And so you'll get her grandparents and her grandchildren and the spouses of her children and on and so forth. And so we can now, it is called the 6Degrees app because when I first created it, I was thinking of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, and it was actually his WikiTree challenge that provoked me to finish this app. But ever since the advent of the CC7 score, that is at the top of every profile page, I have now increased it to 7 degrees, so you can see that. And the winning color from the survey, the deep blue sky. Um, now, if you don't like those colors, I now have a new option, so you can change the colors. So there's the default colors, there's a nice light pastel palette, or there's the rainbow colors, going red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, and indigo on the inside. So I'm going to switch back to the default ones for now. And then you'll notice also in this settings menu, there's the option to change fonts, which won't be interesting until we change to some letters. But the other thing that's there is the settings for privacy. So by default, anyone who's living, all of the information is visible. But if you want to privatize that so that when I do turn on first names, for example, you can see all these first names, but those people who are living will show up as a private. So over there, so you see here in these teal ones are actually some of Loretta's grandchildren who are still alive, and so it just says private there. The other option under there is to completely hide anyone who is living. And so you can see now there's some holes in the ring. I'm going to switch to 3 initials, which makes it a little more compact. Even I can go a single initial. There we go. So you can see the holes in the rings where the people who were living are now disappeared. Now, if you really want to hide the fact that there are some living relatives here, one of the features I added in the show menu at the very bottom is the ability to compact the rings. So if there's any spaces in the ring, then when this is checked off, then it will slide them over. So I'm going to click on that. And so now there's a check mark there. So that means that's enabling the compact rings. If I turn it off or not, you'll see how it's going from compact to leaving the holes. I kind of like the holes because if I'm using one of these other features in the show menu, for example, if I want to just see the living connections, I can click on that and, oh, look at that. Oh, is there a bug in the program? No, there's not. Actually, I did that on purpose this time. I did it by mistake somewhere else and thought I'd broken it. But in fact, if we go back to the privacy setting for living, we've told it to hide all the living people. And so that would make sense that if I'm hiding them, and then here I'm trying to show the living connections, well, there's a sort of a conflict there, I guess. But this setting, this privacy setting overrules all the other settings. So let me just change that back to private. So now we can see there are a number of private or living individuals who are related to Loretta. And if I click on this menu option again, then I get an X. So it says toggle off. So it's either they're living with a check mark. So these are the living individuals. And then when they X, that means those who are not living. And the same sort of thing works for relatives. Now, actual relatives are people that are directly related by blood. So parents, children, siblings, that sort of thing. The ones who are not related, not actual relatives, are ones that are related by some type of marriage. So this would be Loretta's son's wife's great-grandfather. So great-great-grandfather. So it's a marriage connection. So they're not a direct relative. So that's what that is. And profiles that I manage. So this is helpful if you come. So apparently there's a few profiles that are on this here that are from people someone else manages and not myself. But considering this was a tree that I worked on during the latest WikiTree challenge, Connectathon, it makes sense that most of the ones do actually belong to me here. Another feature I've added is the ability to look at profiles or filter profiles by a date. So for example, if I want to find out who was alive at the turn of the millennium there on January 1st of 2000, then there we have it. And I could go up by a year or down by a year, and there's not going to be a lot of, there's some more people popping in as I change the date. People who had passed away, obviously, before the millennium. There we go. I also have the option of the opposite view, deceased by a certain date. A fun one I added in was the ability to pick a person and see who was alive sometime during their lifetime. So there's Oscar Peterson, great jazz pianist from Canada. And so those are all the relatives of Loretta who were alive at some point during his lifetime. The other option is to check on profiles that were created before or after a certain date. Now, WikiTree doesn't exist in 1991, so let's make that say 2018. And since I did most of these and I didn't join till a little bit later, let's make that say 2020. How does that look? There we go. So those are some that are created before that, and then here's the ones that were created after that date. Here you go. So I'm going to close that date panel right there. And the last feature is one that used to be in an earlier version of the app, but I have now tweaked it to give it a little bit more power and oomph. And this is the animation one. This is kind of a fun feature. So if you want to animate, you can choose to animate by birth date, profile date, or alive on. So we'll just start at the birth date. And if you just choose continuously, it's going to start at the earliest birth date it found and just drive forward with that. And you can see as the date advances, people pop in as they are born. And once they're there, they will stay if this is the choice that you've got. Now, this is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause that, but you can use the controls to go up and down. Hold on here. you can go to the very back, you can go to the very beginning again, and you can use these. There's my mouse is a little sticky today, so that's not working as well as but you can also jump. So if you want to jump by, instead of going up by 1 year at a time, you can go by 5 years. And again, we can we could pick a different starting date. So let's say we want to start at 1900. There we go. And now, there we go, it kind of fills in a little faster. And there we go, now my controls are working. Sometimes you just have to pick a different option and just let it sort of reset itself for the mouse to work. So there we go. And if you pick a live on that date, so that means they're born before it and they didn't pass away till after that sort of thing. And that is kind of a neat feature, because if we did that, then you can sort of see people pop in as they're born and then they pop out again. You see, so if you picked a certain date, you could find all the people who were alive at the same time. And then, of course, there's also profile dates. So you could, if you wanted to choose, one thing you might want to do for that is pick the beginning of, say, a connectathon, and go change it back to 1 day and just see how you advanced, how you progressed during that. See, there we go, getting ready for the connectathon, boom, 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 there we go. So that's one thing you could do. So I think those are all the new features in the ring mode here. I'm going to close this up. I'm just going to show you again. So there's all. Let's go to actual relatives. If you do the compact rings, so that's one. So there's all the relatives who are directly related, and they're all pressed together in one compact ring, and there's the ones who are not. So again, you may or may not find that useful or interesting, but there you have it. Now I'm going to switch over to a different relative, and this is a great-grandfather on my French-Canadian side. And so I've gone into tree mode here, and I've loaded up, and let's go back, let's step back to 5 degrees. So now in tree mode, there's another menu option here under settings, and that is to control repeats. So with this family tree, you can see that it's very, very big, lots of family members, and some of these profiles have halos around them, and that indicates that there is a multiple relationship. So if I click on this one right here, for example, François Daoust, he is Achilles' 3 times great-grandfather, but he's the 3 times great-grandfather in 2 different ways. One via his father, and one via his mother. So François and his wife, Suzanne Montpetit, had 2 daughters, Angélique and Joseph, and one was the direct ancestor of Achilles' father, Élie, and one was the direct ancestor of Achilles' mother, Josephine. So because of that, they're related twice, and their children are related twice because they're brothers or sisters of both of the daughters. So by default, up until this point, I've always included all of these people, all of these occurrences on the family tree, and that's the default view. So there's the same family unit right there with Francois and Suzanne and their children. But if you prefer a more compact view and not have all these repeats, then I've got 2 settings for that. One is to still show them, but to sort of de-emphasize them. And this was actually a suggestion by Mags Galden, good friend and WikiTree member. And so for the ones that show up the repeats basically. So over here, the same family unit, but um, there's no halo around them, there's no color, they're gray. So you know that they're there, or you know that they're part of the tree, but they're not emphasized. So you can sort of kind of ignore them. But one thing I've done though is when you do click on any of those that are multiple, shows multiple ways, I have put a yellow halo around so you can see the one that you selected, and if you scroll around, you can see the one that it's connected to. So there you go. So there's the other one. And so if you want to get rid of that, then you can close the pop-up. You can also close the pop-up by just clicking on the same dot over again, because it's like an on-off switch. And the third way to get rid of a pop-up is to hit the escape key, which is often used in many programs to dismiss dialogues and stuff. So I've used it here for that. The third option, there is a third option though for dealing with repeats, and that is to hide them completely. And so if I click on that, then it will hide repeats. Now, in this case, the the um, the immediate family is still there because this person that they're connected to, this is Josefta, um, she and her husband only appear once in terms of direct ancestors. It's her parents that are the repeats. So, but I have to show the connection of how she connects to them. So that's going to show. But if I go up to the next generation and load the sixth degree, then what you'll see is, so here is Francois and Suzanne. And so Francois with his many siblings and Suzanne with her many siblings. And if you follow the line down, there's all of their children. And that family unit would normally have been repeated over here in the far right. But when we're in hide mode, all you do is you see the immediate family, and you can see the highlights of who you've selected and go back there. But the actual ancestors of this repeat, Francois and Suzanne, will not show here. You have to find their original place. There we are. And so that gives you the full picture of Suzanne's family and the full picture of the descendants down to as many levels as you have chosen. So that's an extra feature that someone had requested. So there you have that. Now, let us go back. There is one more feature, and this is the one I'm most excited about, though it is one that may not affect everyone, but it is a feature. So let me just reload my own chart. And you see it's growing. It's loading the connections one by one. And you can see that as it loads, it tells you what's happening up here. So it's phase 1 of 3. So there's actually, to load all of the information for this app to work, there's actually 3 phases of that. And one is just loading the names and the relationships up to degree 7. And so depending on how large your tree is, that may take a little bit of time. But I do give you sort of a heads up of, we're all of degree 5 is now loaded. We're working on 6, so we're getting there almost. And as it loads, you can see that it gives you the numbers of the numbers that have loaded, and so degree 7 still has 0, so there's nothing there. But and it tells you how many are currently showing, and by default it starts off with degree 1. So I've got 13 connections. But what you didn't see in those other 2 profiles, but you now see on mine, is that those 13 connections are biological and adoptive. So I was adopted and recently connected with my biological family. And when I created my profile on WikiTree, well, eventually when I created, I edited my profile on WikiTree and I added a feature that showed the information about my my adoption. So from when you open the pop-up of any person in this app, if you click on this link, it actually opens up a new window to take you to their profile. So you can see there is the information about my adoption and who my adoptive parents are and who my biological parents are. And there's a template. So if you went into edit mode, you could actually see there's the template, adopted child template. Okay, so I did that. And because I did that, and I've now added some logic into the app so that when it first loads up a person, it checks the bio to see if that adopted template is there. And if it is, then it loads information for your biological as well as your adoptive family. And now in the settings menu for me and anyone who's got that adopted child template, there is an extra option. So you can show, by default, it shows both sets of family. Let me add a few more rings to this. But if you click on the entry, then it'll toggle. So there's the profiles that are just my adoptive family. Click on it one more. Those are the profiles that are only my biological family. And then one more time, and it clicks on them all. And again, if I only wanted to show my adoptive family and I wanted to make that a little more compact, I could click on that. And then I could, let me privatize the names. And then if I go to first name, so there we are. So Patrick and Bernadette are my parents, the mom and dad who raised me, and Thomas and Louisa were one set of grandparents, and Donald and Eva were another. And of course, my siblings and children are all living, so they are private right now, but you can see some others that have passed on, that you can see their full names. So those features can filter out names and on this side. So if I go over now, I've got it set for adoptive family. If I go to my family tree now, there is my adoptive family tree. But because my profile, when I created my profile, I connected it with my biological family, this is not something I could ever do on WikiTree before, but now I can. So I can show my adoptive family tree, or I can go to settings and change it to biological, and I can show my biological family tree, or, and this is a feature that doesn't exist anywhere else that I know of that I was looking for, I can show a family tree that shows both at the same time. So there you see those, that's my private wife, my 4 siblings, 2 biological, 2 adoptive siblings, and then a little stick there that goes up to what would normally be the mother-father indicator in a regular family tree, but for now that splits the biological tree with the adoptive tree, and where that connects on this list of siblings is actually the splitting point between my biological and my adoptive siblings. But you'll just have to take my word for it because I privatized those names. And there you go. So there's all my aunts and uncles and cousins on one side and on the other side as well. So and all of the other features that you can do with the tree or with the ring mode or with the app, you can now do with one or both types of your family. So for those who are adopted, I think this is a WikiTree first, and I will eventually, when I'm updating the fan chart app later this summer, I will add that feature to the fan chart as well. But there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the tour. It took a little longer than I expected, but those are all the features for now. Again, if you have feedback, feel free to send me a message, and you can do that from the help menu. You can contact the author, click that, and it'll open up a form that'll send me a message. And the only other new feature, which wasn't in any of those, is in the Save As menu. I've now added an option to share the URL. So you can actually, if you click on this and then copy that URL, that will load up this version of the 6Degrees app with your name and with this representation. So that's it for now. Thanks very much. Talk to you later.